Welcome to the Legal Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jolene, and with the Legal Learning Center, I help prospective law students graduate in less time, with less debt and stress, so they can be financially free and live the life they always dreamed as an attorney. If you want 3 free strategies right now, visit legallearningcenter.com/money. And if you're applying to law school or about to, and you want an accountability partner who knows your schedule and helps you through it, one who can review your personal statement and give you hundreds of thousands of dollars in money-saving tips, stay tuned for the release of Financially Free Aspiring Attorneys Accountability Course coming June 1st. Now, today's guest is Jeff Bunn of the Mindful Law Group. He is going to share with us how mindfulness and meditation can help us with our studies and career.
I came upon these various kind of practices, personal practices for myself, began to apply them to our work, to the practice of law, and found that, while initially I kind of thought it was a right brain, left brain, never the twain would meet kind of thing, I've come to learn, for myself at least, that the two circles of the practice of law and alternative personal practices like mindfulness or meditation really overlap a lot, and one can inform and help the other in ways that were not necessarily obvious to me initially, but have grown to become very obvious. And I became, interested in more of advocating for that connection.
So how can mindfulness and meditation help law students?
That as mindfulness and meditation can help lawyers in their daily practice, can also be very useful for law students in terms of managing their own particular stresses or anxieties around the whole law school experience, competing with peers, being, sparring with or being judged by law professors. The whole idea of going through an exam and submitting oneself to the judgment of others is something that we can control. We put a little bit of perspective around that. And if that helps people perform better, because I think that people who feel better generally do make better decisions and do generally perform more professionally, or in the case of a student, perform more effectively.
Yeah, I know that obviously anxieties are very high in law school. I certainly had my first anxiety attack in law school. So practices that help calm the mind and calm the body are definitely needed and beneficial. So what are some techniques that you would recommend for law students to try and explore?
First, I draw a distinction in my mind, a distinction between mindfulness and meditation. The mindfulness idea is just kind of being fully present, and meditation is a means toward that end. So for me, I engage in meditation to achieve or encourage myself to be as mindful, to be as present as possible. So what does that mean? Meditation can mean so many things to so many people. We need to get past all of the associations and the connotations that we have with meditation, because the practice can be very different for different people. And we don't all have to meditate like a monk. We can all take little shorter periods of time, learn relaxation techniques, learn basically to create a little bit of distance between ourselves and our thoughts or our emotions, and be more effective as a result of that. There was a great quote that I love very much: between stimulus and response, there is a space, and it's in that space, it's cause and effect. Stimulus, response. In that space, we have an opportunity to respond rather than to blindly react. And it's in that space that we find our kind of humanity, our ability to deal with thoughts, to deal with emotion. And for me, the practice of meditation is about kind of finding that space and making it just a little bit longer, a little bit wider, so that I can be more skillful in responding to situations. The idea of meditation is what I refer to as a little bit of me time. It's just time to kind of step back from the immediate pressures that are confronting me at a particular moment in time. Take a couple breaths, because that's another thing that I used to wrestle with a lot. I used to believe that what seemed like complex or complicated issues for me had to be responded to by equally complicated or complex responses or strategies or answers. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think quite to the contrary, what might be very complex or complicated for us, we can address or begin to address with some very simple techniques. Something as simple as taking a deep breath, which we all, I mean, that's conventional wisdom 101. Take a deep breath. It's amazing how that can impact us both physically and emotionally. And it's a way of, in taking that breath, finding that space and allowing ourselves a moment to kind of reflect, to be a little bit more skillful in our response and be responsive as opposed to reactive.
What I was visualizing as you were speaking was, I think that's so helpful for things like when you're doing moot court, where you are, on the spot, you're being asked questions as if you're in a trial setting, and you want that perfect response. You want to do well. And especially, again, because that's verbal versus your exam where it's written. I mean, you can definitely sit there and take deep breaths before you start writing and that kind of thing to help get you through the question, make sure you're focused. But I especially envision the moot court where you're just standing there and you're on show. Um, Being able to take that deep breath before you react will result, I think, in a much better answer, or at least sounding better, even if you already have that answer in your head, just sounding better.
That makes a big difference. I can remember, that's funny, that's a wonderful example, because I was a moot court guy. And I remember my first moot court exercise. I was so cool. It's, the batting order. And I was like the last person. And you can see, because you're sitting at counsel's table, you can see whoever's standing at the podium. When the red light goes on, it means you gotta wrap it up. You got a minute. I was like way cool. I was like Mr. Laid Back. I had it all in the bag until all of a sudden the woman who was right in front of me, the red light went on. All of a sudden my tie started jumping off my chest. I was having a panic attack. I was hyperventilating. It was just crazy. But yet that you have to, in that moment, think about what's it going to take to get, first of all, stand up, walk the 2 or 3 steps to the podium, and at least get the first sentence out so that you can start, articulating your thoughts. That was the very first time that for me, I realized I need to anticipate these kind of situations. They happen. I can't control them necessarily, but what I can do is arm myself with some strategies. Breathing is like 101, very fundamental strategy. Instead of like locking up, give ourselves something to do. It'll help. May not remedy the situation. This is a very tense moment, no matter what, but it helps, and it always helped me, at least. I think most lawyers or men or women who are trained to be lawyers have a little bit of, or a lot of the control freak in them. We need to have something to do. So I think it's really important. That's what well-being and mindfulness and meditation do, is they give us strategies. The other thing is like it's the old, I hate to use the word, I still stumble with it sometimes, self-compassion. Give yourself a break. You need to know, again, getting back to your example of like a moot court, maybe your response isn't going to be like spot on. Maybe it's not going to be quite as articulate as if we were back in our room, writing the answer as opposed to like giving it. But you know what? It's the best as long as we, credit ourselves for having done the best we could do in a difficult situation and say, that's okay. I'm going to give myself a little break. But yeah, I could have said this. I could have said that. I could have used this word or that word. But you know what? We did okay. You did a good job. And if you don't give yourself a break, nobody else will. I can tell you that. So learning to give one's self a break, to show one's self a little love, and smile, as opposed to like hand wringing and head butting and doing all the other stuff that we're inclined to do. These are all, I think, incidents of a mindfulness, of a meditation practice. Self-compassion, the ability to give oneself a break, is something that is so needed, and it does come in time. The ROI is not as immediate necessarily as some other things, but the return will come to us if we kind of stick with it. It's like a lot like exercise. I think meditation, whatever that becomes for anyone, is their way of like getting a workout in, and that's how you create muscle memory. Again, another kind of nod to the physical fitness thing, and through that muscle memory, we learn to deal with some of the thoughts and emotions that plague us and render us less effective than we normally are.
Yeah, I saw on your website that meditation can help with memory specifically. How does that work?
So the idea of taking, a monk and having him or her meditate and take pictures through the MRI and watch what parts of the brain fire and how they respond to certain thoughts or disciplines or pictures or whatever it might be. And it's as a result of that becoming a more kind of medically definable and verifiable practice. So the idea again of just like, if we're running or if we're pumping iron in the gym, that we're going to see a result, a physical result. There is a mental or emotional result that comes through meditation. And one of the results is, instead of muscles or capacity, breath capacity to run, it's the mental or emotional capacity to process various information or thoughts or emotion in a way that's more constructive and allows one to think through, gives us a little bit of space again to think through the things we need to think about.
As lawyers, we're so stuck in, I need proof. I want to see the evidence, and it has to make logical sense to me before I ever use it. So that's great, because if that kind of information is out there with MRIs and just, a direct line, a little bit more direct, it just helps a few more people maybe start practicing that mindfulness.
I totally agree. The great challenge is that in some respects, the ROI it's longer. It takes more time to kind of evidence itself than it does in the case of building a better widget. That might be obvious and apparent. For practices like mindfulness or meditation, it just takes more time, and the changes are a little bit more subtle. They're not measurable in the same way, but I think they're measurable nonetheless, and that matters to lawyers. The National Task Force, which now has a new name, they do a really good job of kind of breaking down the different stakeholder groups: law students, lawyers, judges, bar associations, the whole thing. And they talk about what well-being really is, and they do it in a way that, for me, really touches. It really resonates because it's not one thing. They define well-being in terms of professional, intellectual, social, spiritual, emotional, and physical. I think all those are different aspects of everybody's life. And if we can find some grounding in one or more of those areas, then we're going to be more or less well. And we'll be, back to my point, we'll be feeling better about ourselves, about other people. And I think, as I said before, and I say again, I think better people exercise better judgment and give better advice. So that's a really important thing for us all to know.
It is, because
Because
I've seen it in the practice of law where definitely some of my opposing counsels especially could use a little bit of that pausing, that little calmness, that
yeah,
moment. So and that would just help all of us be more well, because then we wouldn't have to react to that anger or aggression, and the entire practice of law, if people were just a bit calmer.
I feel you there. That's big time, and that, quite frankly, was a contributing factor to my desire to, or decision rather, to retire. It's like I just didn't want to deal with that aggravation. Be the change that you want to see in the world. So to your point, yeah, wouldn't it be nice? I said to myself many times, if opposing counsel wasn't such a jerk, or the judge wasn't such a jerk. But you know what? People, we don't like, lawyers in particular, but people in general don't like to be lectured to. They don't like to be told that we're a jerk. It's like, that's going nowhere very fast. So what you do is just be the change. You model that person, model the response, model the behavior that you want them to adopt, and hope that they will see that and consciously or unconsciously begin to adopt that themselves. This idea of civility and professionalism, it all really kind of comes down to the same thing. Being civil is just learning to disagree without being disagreeable. Doesn't mean we don't have a different point of view. Of course we do, but how we express that is really important. It really is.
I can definitely testify to that. There are people that I was working with that in my industry that I was told they were a jerk, and I didn't even realize it because I just didn't respond. And so they had nothing to continue to, I guess, be a jerk with. So they just calmed down. And so before I even realized that they were supposed to be a jerk, we were, doing just fine. So um,
Yes.
it definitely, and I had another guy who was screaming and yelling, and I just kind of was like, "No, come sit down. Let's just chat. Let's work this out." And he kept yelling, and I kept saying the same thing. And finally, about 3 or 4 times later, he finally just sat down in a heap and just said, "It's so tough. I can't," and he was just like letting it all out on me, and it was just hilarious. So yeah, I have definitely seen that, where if you don't react, if you just, whether it requires you to take that deep breath or just pause for a minute before you respond, it can make a huge difference in your relationships with opposing counsel, how you manage your cases, and certainly, obviously, that goes into law school as well. Now, do you
Absolutely.
have a meditation example that you could give us today?
Sure, of course. I mean, a quick one too, which is a favorite of mine, and it's called Metta, Metta, Metta meditation. It's basically kindness or loving kindness, whatever that means. I think for me, what it means is, again, kindness to yourself, which then allows me to be more civil with other people. So meditation is, I think, a great way of kind of messaging consistently and persistently to ourselves, words or notions that are generally kind, that allow us in time to kind of adopt that view or adopt that mentality, and hopefully translates to other people. So if people will are familiar with the instruction, the first kind of getting physically comfortable, first kind of put your feet on the floor, rest your hands on your lap or on your knees, and try to sit erect, not stiff but erect, in a way that'll help facilitate comfortable breathing. And just think, if you're comfortable closing your eyes or kind of averting them down to the floor, and repeat silently to yourself after me. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I find ease in my life. This is a meditation that we can repeat to ourselves. If it's a kind of meditation. This is may I be happy can be translated into may you be happy. And I can think of people who I really am fond of and mean that sincerely, just reflexively. It's just what I mean. I can think of somebody who I don't like at all, which is a little bit trickier, but extend those same kind of wishes you extend to yourself, to people who we are kind of naturally attuned with. And then we extend that same wish to somebody that we really don't like. It's really a kind of interesting thing. And then the practice can go to larger groups like a law firm or a law school or a class, and you can get as big or as little with that as you want. But the old idea of, and it's not something that is scripted. It can be stated in lots of different ways. But may I be happy? May I be healthy? May I be safe? May I find ease in my life? Bears some thought. And for me, it's very thought provoking, at least. And I think over time, again, getting back to the kind of messaging thing, because I used to think that something like that, the metta meditation, was not really my cup of tea. I wasn't really into that. And when I would hear somebody go through these different thoughts, different phrases, I would reflexively think to myself, what a bunch of hooey that is. But again, in the context of, for me, this really occurred to me recently in terms of the political races, the idea of messaging. If one hears something consistently again and again and again and again, one begins to adopt that or become more comfortable with that message. And this is a way, I think meditation is a way of messaging to ourselves in various thoughts that bring out conditions or qualities that make us a little bit more forgiving of ourselves and also make us more effective in our tests. As a result of that, all the things that we have to do, all the interactions that we have with other people, the dominoes begin to fall.
I
So
definitely
that's
noticed the difference, even just in those 20 seconds that we did the meditation.
I mean, that's a quickie. That's a real quickie, Jolene. And that's again back to the point I made before about meditating like a monk. Well, you don't have to. If you want to and you have time to, if there's a day of the week, if it's a weekend, for instance, if we want to do that, then we can extend. But it can the time in which we meditate, but throughout the course of the day, if it's a half hour in one sitting, or if it's a half hour broken down into 10 different moments where we just take little snatches of moments, it'll help. It'll help us all. Helps me.
That's great. We'll be sure to link it all up. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And let's just keep banging the drum and take care of ourselves, people.
Before we get into my top takeaways, a quick word from our sponsor, Juno. If you need to take out student loans, check in with Juno first. Juno can often offer law students 1 to 2% lower interest rates than the federal government, and with no origination fees and oftentimes cash back as well. Visit advisor.legallearningcenter.com/Juno for more information. My top takeaways from our chat with Jeff. Number 1, meditation means many different things. Just learn relaxation techniques, distance your thoughts and emotions. It's basically me time. Number 2, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space, we have an opportunity to respond rather than react. So our goal should be, if we are reactive, to try to widen that gap, to lengthen it. Number 3, self-compassion is important. Give yourself a break. Number 4, be the change you want to see. Model the calm. All right, a full transcript is available at legallearningcenter.com/the Mindful Law Group. Show notes are available there as well. Stay tuned. Next week, we will speak with Marriott Clardy Davis. She left law school in the middle of her second year to work on her mental health. She's going to share her experience as well as her journey in learning her unique learning style for the bar exam. If you've ever had any problems with your mental health or have any learning differences, you need to hear her story. As always, if you learned something today, please like, share, comment, subscribe so that this show is more visible to others and can help those who may need it. Thanks.